so I'm gonna be redoing this. This is gonna be what if Deku had all for one? You know, basically, Deku. So the way I'm gonna do this, all for one, he's bored. He's like extremely bored. He's mega bored. He killed Nana Shimura. He's on his like wanting to kill all for one spree, but all for one's like, you know what? I'm gonna disappear for a little bit. He's like, I'm gonna disappear for a little bit. So he disappears, basically, which Hasashi Midoriya enters the world. His name is Hasashi Midoriya. He just hides it as that, even though his name was originally Hasashi Shigaraki, because, that's how his name is supposed to be. His last name is Shigaraki. So, Hasashi Shigaraki, or Hasashi Midoriya, he's walking around, and then, he gets a job, because he doesn't want to just, siphon off of his own, wealth, basically. So he's like, I've forgotten what it's like to be, a normal citizen. So he decides, he'll get a job, he gets a job, he's working at the same place as Inko. So, Inko's already been working there for a little while, so she's like, hello there, sir, how can I help you? She's like, hello there, how can I help you? She's looking at the papers. He's like, hello there, I'd like a job here. She's like, alright, please register right here. She points to the paper, because, right now she's had a bad day. Hasashi, he can see that. He's like, what's wrong with, what's going on with you? She basically, she explains, her boss yelled at her for something that, another person did, but she didn't really have the backbone to talk back. Hasashi, he gets that, so he's like, yeah, I get it. I mean, I can, I used to be scared to talk back to the authority before, but honestly, if you don't talk back, then you'll never have a voice. He's saying he's saying some poetic shit. She looks up at him, she sees that, this dashing man, basically, he has white hair. He's like, hello there, my name's Hasashi Midoriya. She's like, oh, Inko Midoriya. Or not Midoriya, but, Inko, basically, and whatever the hell her family name is. So he's like, why don't you tell your boss the real thing that happened? She's like, well, either way, it's been 30 minutes, so if I tell him now, I'm gonna look stupid. He's like, well, it's better late than, it's better now than never. She's like, yeah, I guess you're right. So he's signing the paper, and, he gives her the paper. He's like, yeah, while you're at it, go talk back. He's just saying, show him what you are. Show him, that, you're not gonna back down. So, Inko gives the paper to him, and he's like, thank you, Inko. And she's like, before I go, she explains the situation that, Kelly, we'll say that this chick's name is Kelly, that Kelly was the reason why that happened, and, the guy understood. He's like, oh, that makes so much more sense, blah, 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 blah. He was like, thank you for telling me, I would have probably, I'm not going to lie to you, Inko, if you didn't tell me that, I might have actually had to fire you, and Inko, she sweat drops a little bit, because, it's a good job, because, so basically, she goes out there, she's like, thank you for helping me out. He's like, no problem, I look forward to working with you, blah, 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 blah. So we'll skip 2 weeks, and Hasashi is climbing up the ranks of his workplace fast. Because, imagine having, all those fucking quirks and not climbing up not climbing up the ranks. So basically, he's already, basically, working as well as someone who would work there for, 2 years. And, Inko's been working there for, 4, so we'll say for 4 years. She basically, is talking to Hasashi. She's like, you really have been doing great here. I'm very impressed, basically. He's like, yeah. And he's also like, oh, by the way, Inko, about those files that you sent me, can we talk about those over some coffee? Basically, she's like, okay, they go drink some coffee, they talk about the files. Then after they do that, they basically just talk about life for a little while. Hasashi finds her life very interesting, and, she's like, so do you have any relatives? And, he thinks back, he's like, well, I had a brother, but, he passed away a long time ago, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, I was the older one of the two. I do miss him at times, even though we didn't always see eye to eye, basically. She's like, oh, I'm very sorry about that, what was his name? He basically says, He basically says his name. We'll say his name is Tomura, and that's why he called Shigaraki Tomura Shigaraki. Or, he just named, his name is just Tomura for now. He's like, his name was Tomura, and she's like, oh, or no, his name is going to be Izuku, because that's where they'll get the name. So he's like, his name was Izuku and stuff like that, basically, He says, like, even though we, never really liked each other too much, I plan on naming my first son after him, even if it sounds like a bit too much. And he's like, no, never, family, even if you argue, you're still family, basically, Hisashi's happy to hear this, because, he does feel bad about his brother all the time, because he did love his brother, but, in this one, at least, he still loved his brother. He still has, like, emotion, because All For One doesn't have emotion because of his quirk, but he still has, like, some emotion, but not as much as, like, a normal person. So, basically, like, they talk. He's like, we should do this more often. I feel comfortable talking to you. It's pretty rare that I feel comfortable talking with anyone. So, basically, they do that more often. They become a thing. Basically, word gossips around work. Then, like, a few years later, they get married. Then, about a year later, Izuku is brought into the world. And, Hisashi, he's like, I'll take care of work for a while. You do this. And, she's on basically, like, paid vacation. So, she's taking care of Izuku, And Izuku, he loves his dad and he loves his mom more than anything. Basically, like, All Might is his hero, but, like, his dad is his number one hero. Like, All Might, yeah, but he's like, my dad's the best, blah, 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 And, we'll say that Hisashi's quirk that he shows off is still fire-breathing, because why wouldn't he? So he's like, yeah, I want a quirk just like my dad's, blah, 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 blah. Bart goes like, yeah, fire-breathing's cool, but, like, imagine having All Might's quirk. Deku doesn't really care about All Might as much. He still thinks All Might's cool. He still looks up to All Might. But he looks up to his dad way more. So, basically, Deku's 4 years old, and we're just to make the plot a bit easier for me, we'll say that, All For One doesn't show up, like, as a quirk, basically. It doesn't show up on the quirk readings. So they're like, I'm sorry, but your boy is quirkless. Inko's sad. Hisashi, like, looks sad, but he thinks, like, does Deku have All For One? Basically, like, he tries to test out Deku, and Deku shows no signs of All For One. He even, like, sees if he can steal the quirk, but he doesn't, like, feel anything, like, being stolen, so basically, like, he did that during Deku's sleep, so that Deku, like, he tried to do it, like, because if he felt a quirk, then he would have stopped, but he didn't feel anything, so he was like, alright, well, we'll be alright for now. So, Deku is 10 years old now, and, his dad, basically, at this point, like, Deku, he's at home, right, and Deku's dad is having the fight with, All Might. So Deku's just at home, he's chilling out, They have the fight with All Might. We'll say that, do I want to change anything up in the All Might versus All For One? No, we'll say that just it goes exactly the same. Hisashi still gets his head fucked up. All Might still gets his, like, respiratory system, like, half destroyed. So Deku basically, like, he's sad because, like, his dad says, oh, I'm gonna be, they basically moved me to America. I got a promise at a job in America that just, like, pays way better, which is a lie, but he's basically gonna send them, like, the criminal enterprise money, which is definitely way more than what Hisashi already makes. So, they're living in a nice house. They can live in a nice house, but they still live in the apartment. Inko is sad. She's still, she doesn't become Fat Inko because, well, Hisashi was around way more. So Deku, he always talks to his dad. He always calls him, like, all the time. Then one day, like, there's a villain attack, right? And this villain, he's coming, like, he's about to kill this hero. Deku, he jumps into action, He basically, like, pushes the hero. He pushes the villain out of the way. And, like, as he pushes the villain, like, this red aura, like, this red lightning comes off his hand. He touches the villain. And, like, all of a sudden, like, we'll say the villain's quirk was, like, a hardening quirk. Like, all of a sudden, the villain unhardens. And he's like, what the hell? And he tries to harden. He's like, I can't use my quirk. Basically, the hero just goes over there and knocks the villain out. He's like, you know what happened? Because the hero was, like, on the ground and he was looking down. Deku's like, nah, I don't know what happened. But this is when Deku is a bit older. So we'll say Deku is 15 now, because UA is a college. Remember, UA is a college, so Deku is 15 now. He's like, alright, so what the fuck was that? He's wondering what the hell was that. So he starts, walking around, like bumping into people really, but like on accident. But not really on accident. He makes it seem like it's on accident, but like every time he bumps into someone, he gets this feeling, like he feels like this flame coming off them. And it's not very strong, but it's still flame. Some people it's been okay strong. But Deku, like, at one point, like, he bumps into this one person, and, he decides to go for the flame. So, he touches this one person on accident. He touches the guy's shoulder. He's like, yeah, sorry about that. And, he feels, like, the flame, like, go from, like, that guy into his hand. And the guy doesn't know what happened. He's like, yeah, no problem, dude. And then, he just walks away. Deku, he's like, alright, that's weird. So, the way I'm going to make this happen, Deku has All For One. When All For One tried to steal it, All For One can't steal Deku's All For One because it's more advanced. So the way that I'm going to make this work, first off, Deku's All For One can either hurt like a bitch or not hurt at all, depending on how Deku wants to steal the quirk. And Deku takes way less time to steal a quirk because, All For One has to grab your face. Takes like a solid 10 seconds before you can take your quirk. Deku, his is like instant, alright? And also, if Deku, let's say Deku gets a lightning quirk, right? He'll get 20 lightning quirks, but he'll get one strong lightning quirk and 19 other weak lightning quirks. He can sacrifice, the other 19 weaker lightning quirks to make the stronger lightning quirk stronger. Basically, he can use other quirks as sacrificial pawns, but he'll never be able to get those quirks back. So let's say let's say Deku had Endeavor's quirk, right? And then he took a weaker fire quirk. He basically he could either give Endeavor he could either sacrifice Endeavor's quirk, which would give him way more points since it's way more stronger, and then go into the weaker fire quirk, which would make it about as strong, if not a little bit stronger than Endeavor's. Or he could or he could get the weaker one, use it imagine rare items in a game and how you sell them for money. The rarer the item, the more money you'll make, basically. But the more money you make, the more rarer the item you can get. So he can sell a bunch of weaker items to get a stronger item, or he can sell a bunch of weaker items to make an item that he already has stronger. So basically if Deku had a weak lightning quirk, and he put it into a stronger lightning quirk, then the stronger lightning quirk would get even stronger from there. So I'm basically making his quirk have the ability to upgrade quirks that he already has. So yeah, if how do I put this? If Deku had a strength enhancement quirk and he got Muscular's quirk, and Muscular's quirk was stronger, if he sacrificed that strength enhancer to put it into Muscular's quirk would become stronger, and Deku could use Muscular's quirk. Any drawbacks? No, not really. He's the more quirks he takes at the same time, the more emotionless he gets. But if he takes a break from stealing quirks, he'll slowly but surely get his emotions back. But yeah, Deku's gonna be quirk crazed for a little bit. He'll be stealing quirks like a fucking madman for a little while. So Deku, he's bumping into people, touching them. He's basically just bumping into people now because he's mastered it to the point where he only has to bump into people to take their quirks. So he's just yoinking quirk after quirk after quirk. But he's basically getting the stronger ones that he finds and upgrading them. And then if he gets a stronger one, out of sheer luck, if he gets Kurogiri's teleport quirk and then he gets a weaker teleport quirk, he'll just upgrade Kurogiri's. But he doesn't have Kurogiri's upgrade or teleport. Right now, Deku has, we'll say, 10 very strong quirks. And what's it called? This, I don't know if I want to make him a villain or a vigilante. I don't want to make him a hero in this. I don't want to make him a hero because that'll stop Deku from stealing as many quirks as he wants. And I really just want to let Deku go at it. Because I don't want to say that Deku goes to the prison and, he takes a few quirks and then he leaves. No, I want Deku to just be out here yoinking quirks like a fucking madman. So basically, people are now reporting because, their quirks are gone, that their quirks are disappearing. And All For One, he notices this. He's like, okay, what the hell is this? And then, And then after that, All Might, he's like, okay, is All for One back? Like, he's worried now. Because, like, people are like, yeah, my quirk's just gone. Like, they're panicking and stuff like that. So, Deku is, like, slowly, like, walking around. Like, he's not trying to steal as many quirks as possible, but he's trying to take a good amount of quirks. So he'll bump into people, and if their quirk seems strong, then he'll take it. But, like, he'll also take weaker quirks just to, like, throw them off the trail. Basically, they're worried that, like, quirks are slowly, like, dying or something. So people are, like, preparing for, like, the end of quirks or some shit. So All for One, he immediately, like, checks on Midoriya. He's like, yo, Izuku, have you seen about the news about, like, all these quirks disappearing? And Deku's like, yeah, that's crazy, right? Because he's emotionless at this point, so he realized, like, if he tells his father, maybe his father will have to tell the hero organization, because he doesn't know that his dad is All for One. Like, not even Inko knows that, Hisashi is All for One. So, Hisashi's like, yeah, that's crazy that, people are out here losing their quirks, Basically, like, he's also like, yeah, I'm actually coming to visit soon as well, Deku's like, he's excited now because, he hasn't seen his dad in a bit. So he's like, oh, really, you're coming to visit, Basically, Deku's dad's like, yeah, I'm coming to visit, blah, 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 So Deku, so Hisashi, he comes over, like, a few days later, and, he basically, like, put an illusion and, like, shape-shifting quirk over himself to where he still looks like Hisashi, and, he looks, like, tired, so basically, he looks, like, slightly more tired and maybe, like, a little bit more older, but other than that, he looks like normal Hisashi, Inko's happy to see him, Deku's happy to see him. So then, Hisashi tries to, like, see if Deku has a quirk or not again. But, like, he can never get, like, the chance to, because anytime he comes, like, close to Deku when Deku's unsuspecting, Deku gets this, like, feeling that, like, something familiar is around him. So he'll look around and he'll see his dad, and, he'll be like, oh, that was it. Basically, Deku senses, like, All for One in Hisashi, because his All for One is stronger. So he can, like, sense the quirks in people, but, like, since Hisashi's is stronger than, since Hisashi's is, like, already All for One, he can basically sense Hisashi. But, like, he can still do that to other people. Right now, it's just weaker. But because, like, he's so close connected to All for One, he still senses Hisashi. Like, if he was around All Might, he would sense All Might, because, basically, the basis of One for All comes from All for One. Like, the stockpile, basically. It comes from All for One. So, like, if, All for One gave, Shigaraki a muscle enhancement quirk, Deku could probably sense Shigaraki. But after a while, if he trains enough, he'll be able to sense literally anyone. Like, anyone with a quirk in a 5-mile radius. But for now, he can only sense quirks that are given or taken, or if you have All for One. So Deku basically, like, he's like, oh yeah, what's up, Dad? Like, he sensed, like, basically, Deku, he's like, he wants to see, like, what his father's quirk is like. So, he bumps into his father on accident, parentheses. He sees this giant fucking flame. Like, because, like, the way he sees quirks is, like, the way you see All for One, or One for All. Like, it's a flame that's, like, lit, right? So what Deku sees, it's like, what the fuck? Because he sees, like, the biggest flame he's ever seen in his life. So, like, his eyes are widened, and he looks at his dad, and his dad's like, what is it? Deku's like, yeah, it's nothing, never mind, basically. So he walks away, he's like, what the fuck was that? Because that's the biggest, like, shit he's ever seen. Because, like, normal quirks will say they're the size of a baseball, right? But, like, they're they're in the middle of the chest. They're like the size of a baseball, but like All for One's flame was basically already leaking out of his body, like, easy as hell. Deku's flame, it's pretty big. It's like around the size of, like, a watermelon, we'll say. But All for One's, it was leaking out of his body, like, basically, like, Deku, like, he could practically, like, feel the amount of quirks coming off of him. And, Deku basically, like, he's like, Dad, what's your quirk again? He's like, what do you mean, what's my quirk again? It's fire breathing. Deku felt more than a flame quirk. He felt a lot more than a flame quirk. Basically, like, he sits down with his dad, he's talking to him. He's like, Dad, are you sure, your quirk's just fire breathing? Like, at this point, like, Deku's caught on that Hisashi, like, is doing something else than just, basically being Hisashi. So Asashi was like, how do you, like, why do you think this? Like, like, basically, like, Deku's trying to, Deku's trying to investigate on Asashi, but low-key, like, Hasashi is now investigating on Deku. Deku's like, I don't know, it's just, like, whenever I see you, you don't, like, throw flame quirk at me. Like, your hair is white, your eyes are red, sure, but, like, Deku's basically talking to Hasashi. He's like, I think that you have more of an ice quirk. Or maybe, something else. But you're a pretty big guy, so I'd maybe say an enhancement, but, you just don't seem like the kind of fire breath guy to me, you know? And, Hasashi laughs. He's like, well, I mean, I didn't really choose the quirk. The quirk chose me. And Deku's like, yeah, you're right. The quirk chose you. So basically, like, there's a moment of silence there. And Hasashi, now he basically, like, he holds onto Deku's shoulder. He's like, listen, son, I'm really happy that I got to see you today. He gives him a hug, and basically, like, he tries to see if Deku has a quirk or not. And, he basically, like, he sees something. He doesn't know what it is, but he sees something, basically. And we'll say that Hasashi can kind of do the same thing as Deku, but not on the same scale. So he sees something. He's like, Deku, you know what? Why don't we go to the quirk doctor today? Maybe we'll find something. And, Deku's like, no, it's fine. I know that I'm quirkless. He's trying to, like, they're trying to, like, argue to themselves, like, all right, does he know something? And, like, if he does know something, how does he know something? Basically. So Inko's basically like, no, like, come on, let's just hang out. And now, like, Hasashi's slightly on edge. And, Deku's really on edge, because after what he felt, he knows his dad doesn't just have a fucking fire-breathing quirk. Because if so, his dad can burn down the fucking world. Because that shit was crazy to him. So Deku, he basically, like, he wants to, like, start following his dad or something. And we'll say that Deku had, like, some sort of invisibility type quirk that he found. So, when Hasashi leaves, Deku's like, well, I'm gonna go to bed, Mom. It was pretty fun seeing Dad again. So basically, like, what Deku does, he basically, like, activates his invisibility quirk. Hasashi gets the feeling that he's being followed, but right now, like, he's too worried about, like, what the hell's going on with Deku. Because, like, somehow Deku basically knew that flame breathing wasn't his only quirk. Not only that, Deku also had, like, something. Because, like, Hasashi can tell, like, the difference between a quirk and, like, something else. He's like, what the hell was that? Like, it felt so familiar, but it felt so foreign at the same time. Because it's all for one, but it's not the same all for one. Like this shit could be called all for all or something, but it's not, all for one. Like, maybe all for himself, but, like, not all for one. So Deku, he's basically following Hasashi, and, Hasashi goes to the bar. Like, Hasashi goes to the bar, and Deku follows him in. And, Kurogiri is like, hello there, sir. Basically, how is seeing the wife and kids? Shigaraki's like, how is my brother? And, Deku hears brother, and he's about to be like, hold the fuck up, He's about to come out there, and she's like, don't worry, Shigaraki, he's doing fine, basically. And Deku, he's curious on what the hell's going on. So Shigaraki's like, so when are we going to, basically, like, when are we going to pull him into the plans? And All For One's like, listen, I really don't want to pull him into the plans, I'm not gonna lie. I just want Deku to have, like, a nice life. Basically, Deku's heartwarmed by this, but, it's a bit too late for that. And then, like, he's like, so, what's it called? Why do you look so on edge? And then, basically, give me a interruption after interruption after interruption. But basically, Kurogiri is like, you seem on edge, Master. What's going on? And, basically, All For One explains to Kurogiri that he thinks that Deku knows about his real quirk. And, Kurogiri is like, how do you say that, sir? He's like, well, when I was talking to Izuku, and, like, today, he bumped into me, and then, he looked at me funny, and then, Kurogiri is like, I don't think that's a reason for you to suspect that your son knows about your quirk. And then after that, basically, he's like, no, that's not the end of it. He asked me if, my quirk was just fire breathing. Which I told him, yeah, of course, because, I'm not trying to tell him that I can steal quirks. And he says this out loud, and, Deku's like, oh, shit. He's thinking to himself, oh, shit, So, after that, All For One, he's basically like, well, I told him that, it was just fire breathing, but Deku, he was just, like, adamant on the fact that it wasn't just fire breathing. you know. So basically, after that, I tried to see if Izuku had a quirk, and there was something there. Like, he was like, wait, what? I thought he was quirkless. He's like, yeah, that's the thing. He is quirkless. But there was something. I felt something. I don't know what it was. It was completely foreign to me. It was a quirk, but it wasn't a normal quirk. It felt like there was more to it, Because he's never tried to steal all for one from himself, so he wouldn't know what it's like. So he's like, yeah, honestly, I want to check on what the hell this is more. But for right now, like, he drops the illusion. He's like, for right now, I'm very, concerned of Izuku. Deku, he's like, what the fuck? Like, he's wondering, like, what the fuck is that? And, like, he's like, what the hell happened to my dad? He's just, like, wondering this to himself. And then we'll say, like, basically, like, some dust, because Shigaraki, like, basically, like, destroyed shit, like, comes, Deku sneezes, and, like, immediately everyone is on high fucking alert, and Deku's like, oh, fuck. So, imagine, like, Obito's Kamui, basically, how he does that. So Deku just does that and dips, because he'll have that teleportation, because I thought Kamui would be cool. So Deku's like, oh, shit, like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck happened to my dad? Is that even my dad? Basically, he's worried now, because, like, he doesn't know whether that was really, like, Hasashi or not. So basically, like, Deku, he's prepared to go back in there, and he's prepared to go, like, kick some ass. But then he remembers, like, the flame that he felt coming off of Hasashi, maybe. So, Deku, basically, he's like, alright, well, if that is my dad, then I need to get stronger before I get answers from him. And he's like, if that's not my dad, then I need to get stronger so I could possibly fight him and find out what actually happened to my dad. Because, like, what he felt was not fire breathing at all. He's scared. He thinks that, his dad might be either dead or tortured, or that might even be his dad. Like, he's thinking best case scenario, his dad is, like, has been kidnapped. Then he's thinking, like, worst case scenario, that is his dad, and something, like, he's hiding something from them. So Deku basically, like, he heads home. He starts, just basically getting ready to go out and steal some quirks. So he walks around. God damn, this house is so loud for no reason. So, I have to get it far away. So Deku basically, he's getting ready to, like, go out to steal some quirks. And Inko's like, where are you going? He's like, well, I'm going out for, like, a jog. So Deku, he's going out for, like, a jog, and then, he bumps into someone. It's basically the same guy that he saw from the bar, who was like, where's my brother? Like, how's my brother, basically? And Deku's like, oh, hello there, basically. Because Deku recognizes him. He's like, oh, shit. He's probably looking for me. Shigaraki's like, did you see anybody, like, running at all? And, like, Deku's like, nah. Well, he's like, actually, I saw someone heading that way, and he just points in that direction. And Shigaraki's like, thank you. And he just starts running that direction. Deku basically, like, starts jogging in this direction that Shigaraki was coming from. He bumps into his dad, because, like, Hisashi was trying, All For One was trying to look for whoever that was, too. He bumps into him, he's like, oh, hey, Dad. He's a bit more nervous now, because he doesn't know if that was actually his dad. Hisashi's like, oh, hey, Izuku, what are you doing out here? He was like, well, I was just going for my, like, nightly jog. He's like, oh, Inko, you go out for jogs at night? He's like, yeah, what about you? He was like, honestly, it's the same. Basically, he was like, yeah, someone tried to rob me and he ran off. And then this nice, kid tried to stop him. He's like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, honestly, great guy. And Deku's like, yeah, I think I ran into him and I saw, the person who ran. He's like, yeah, what did he look like? He's like, I didn't really get a good look at him. He just was running. He was like, all right, He's like, thanks, Izuku, He's prepared to walk off. And, Deku basically, like, he's looking at, like, Hisashi, basically. He's like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, that's what he's wondering in his head. But basically, like, Hisashi, like, had a few quirks on. Like, we'll say that he had, like, a few location, mind reading, basically, like, in case someone who was walking by happened to be like, what the fuck did I see? Was that guy, All For One? Like, basically, like, Hisashi had mind reading quirks on. Hisashi looks back at Deku, he's like, what do you mean by that? And Deku's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, he's like, in Deku's head, he's like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And he's like, and like, Hasashi walks up to Deku, he's like, you know something. And like, Deku's like, what do you mean I know something? He's like, how the fuck? You know, basically Deku's like, mind reading. He's like, how the hell do you know? And Deku's like, shit. Like, you know, he's like, shit. So Hasashi, like, tries to grab, like, Deku. You know, Deku basically dodges. He's like, alright. He's like, alright, since the cat's out of the bag, who the fuck are you? You know? Hasashi looks at him confused. He's like, I'm Hasashi Midoriya. He's like, alright, but why the fuck did I sense, like, that crazy-ass fucking quirk of yours? He's like, what do you mean, crazy-ass quirk of mine? You know, Deku's like, don't play fucking dumb with me. I felt that. That was the craziest shit I've ever seen. You know? Hasashi's like, explain. He's like, I felt the flame of your quirk, and that was not just one quirk. That was multiple fucking quirks. You know, he's like, either that was multiple quirks, or you have a very, very powerful quirk. You know, Hasashi now, he's like, alright, how does Izuku know all this? You know, Deku's like, listen, I heard what you said about stealing quirks. So he's like, so it was you spying on us. And he's like, yeah, you know, after you explain yourself about that, I need to know about this brother shenanigans, basically. You know, Hasashi laughs. He's like, all right, but let's talk about this somewhere else. He's like, but how do I know you're really, you know, my dad? Because I saw that true form of yours, and I'm not gonna lie, scared the shit out of me, you know. Hasashi's slightly hurt because, you know, his son is scared of him. But he's like, well, any good father is, you know, able to scare his son. He's like, not the fucking fear that I felt. So basically, Hasashi's like, alright, how about I just bring you, like, you know, with me and we can talk there. And Deku's like, you know what, alright. Because, like, Deku would normally not do this, but then he, like, his quirk, like, Deku realized that his quirk steals quirks. Because, you know, the same people that he's been, like, borrowing quirks from, like, have been losing quirks at a rapid rate. And this guy did say that his quirk was stealing quirks. So Deku, he's like, alright then, well, fine. You know, basically, you know, what's it called? All for One calls up Shigaraki. He's like, I found the guy, head back to base, and then we'll talk to him. He's like, talk? Shouldn't we torture the fucker? He's like, well, I don't think you want to torture this one. You know, Deku basically like, goes back with him, and then, you know, he goes to the bar, and like Kurogiri's surprised to see like Deku. He's like, sir, are you sure you should bring, you know, him? He's like, the person who was spying on us was him. You know, like Kurogiri's confused now because he's like, I had no like idea that person was here. How was that, you know, Midoriya? You know, Deku's basically like, and you are, you know, he's like, my name's Kurogiri. You know. And Deku is like, alright, whatever. And Shigaraki like, gets in. God damn, this house is too loud. Fuck. So Deku basically, like, he walks in there. He's like, yeah. You know, Shigaraki comes in. He's like, so where's the guy? You know, he sees Deku and he's like, so, like, why is he here? Basically, like, that's his first question. Like, why is he here? And he's like, well, Izuku somehow figured out about this place, you know. Now like, Shigaraki's confused. He's like, yeah, I told you. Like, you know, Shigaraki's now really confused, and Deku's like, alright, so you'll start explaining, or I'm gonna start stealing, basically. And now Shigaraki's even more fucking confused. He's like, what do you mean stealing? What, are you gonna fucking steal my stuff? He's like, no, you're fucking quirk, you idiot. You know, basically, like, Hasashi looks at Deku, he's like, so you have it. And he's like, have what? Like, all for one. And he's like, the fuck is all for one? Because he doesn't know the name of it. He just thinks of it as the quirk that steals quirks. He's like, oh, yeah, you probably don't know its name. He explains that it's called all for one. Deku basically, like, he realizes, like, you know, that his dad has it. So he's like, so your quirk is to steal quirks, you know? Basically, like, Hasashi's like, yeah. And he's like, that amount of quirks, that isn't human. So how many quirks do you even have? He's like, if only I fucking knew. Like, you know, because at this point, he's lost count. So, basically, Deku's like, alright, so start explaining yourself, and, you know, and I'll understand. So, Hasashi basically explains how, you know, he wanted to change the hero society, blah, 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 blah. This, that, and the third. And Deku understands a lot of it, since, you know, he's seen what happens to quirkless people, and, you know, what happens to people with villainous quirks, and that, this, and that. So Deku's like, yeah, I don't really plan on joining you, I'm not gonna lie, And then, All For One's like, I'm honestly glad that you said that. So Deku's like, but I do plan on doing my own stuff. He's like, what do you mean by that? He's like, being a hero isn't really my thing anymore. Honestly, after everything that I've done, I don't think that I'm worthy to be a hero. I've stolen, probably about 600 quirks at this point. Which, All For One, he's like, wait, you've stolen 600 already? Deku's like, yeah. He's like, how have you not been caught yet? He's like, well, mine works a bit differently than yours, I think. He explains how his works. And All For One is astonished, because Deku's quirk, is, way more stealthy, for one. It's way easier to, hide. Deku's like, yeah, but, keep me in touch with whatever you guys are doing so I don't, get in you guys' way. So, All For One does plan on keeping Deku in touch, and, he's like, well, keep me in touch with what you do, and I'll keep you in touch with what I do. He's like, well, it was fun talking to you, Dad. He just leaves. And, Deku's like, this is the weirdest day ever. Basically. So Deku, he gets home, Inko's worried because he was, really late. He was like, yeah, sorry, I ran into some old friends, and I even bumped into Dad. He was on his way leaving. She was like, oh, okay, basically, she accepts that. Because Sasashi did call and say that, Deku was with him for a little while afterwards. After he realized that Deku was way past his curfew. So, what's it called? Next episode, we're gonna start on the 10 months of training, because Deku's still gonna go to UA, but he's basically gonna go to be a spy, mostly. For himself, not really for his dad. He's not gonna... He knows about the League of Villains, he knows what they're about, he knows everything, where their locations are and stuff. But he's not gonna be a part of it, at all. But he doesn't really want to be a hero. He more or less wants to just keep an eye on 1A and All Might and all that. And, also, I forgot to say, Hisashi did explain that, All Might has a quirk that, rivals that I basically made and stuff like that. And he explains the quirk. Deku is surprised about what happened with his, uncle, who he's named after, Izuku. So Deku basically is like, alright, well, either way, I got school tomorrow, because he's still in middle school. Or he's in high school now, because UA is going to be at college. So he's like, either way, I have school, so... He basically, after this, we'll say that Deku is 17 and, 17? No. We'll say Deku is 16 right now. So, he's gonna just be stealing quirks, basically, for the next, I don't know, a year or two, basically, to get stronger. But he's gonna be sacrificing most of the weak ones, because he will get, a lot of weak ones. And the number of quirkless people will, skyrocket. And All For One does tell Deku, to chill out. Because he does know that Deku loses more emotion. The more quirks he steals at a time and doesn't take a break. So Deku does. He chills out, but, we'll start on the 10-month training camp after this. So, yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out. Fucking...